Hello everyone, welcome to our channel. Today we'll be discussing the daily life of a concubine in ancient China. When you think of a concubine in ancient China, you might picture a beautiful woman in flowing silk robes, her face half hidden behind a delicate fan, her eyes hinting at a mysterious past. A symbol of luxury and intrigue, a concubine's life might seem like a tantalizing mix of glamour and power. But what did a typical day in the life of a concubine really look like? During the Ming and Qing dynasties, inside the Forbidden City's opulent walls, the routine of a concubine was a carefully choreographed dance of beauty, art, etiquette, and calculated moves. Our story begins at the crack of dawn. Before the sun's golden rays touch the palace walls, a concubine's day has already started. Her attendants, usually a mix of maidservants and eunuchs, are up and about, readying her for the day ahead. The first notes of a pipa or guqin, a traditional Chinese musical instrument, drift through the air, signaling the start of the morning ritual. As the light of dawn filters through the silk curtains, the concubine awakens. Her eyelids flutter open, revealing eyes that hold both weariness and hope. The path to becoming a concubine is rarely an easy one, and her nights are often filled with longing for a past life or dreams of a future that only the imperial palace can provide. She sits up, and her attendants rush to her side, their movements as graceful and fluid as those of a well-trained dancer. First, her hair is brushed and combed into an elaborate style, each strand finding its designated place in an intricate design. This is not merely a display of vanity, but a demonstration of feminine skill and patience. While her hair is being styled, her face is also prepared. The application of powder and rouge is not merely a cosmetic ritual, but a form of art, designed to enhance her natural beauty to perfection. Once her reflection pleases them, they move on to dressing her in a robe that combines comfort and elegance. The choice of color and design is no accident, each hue and pattern telling a silent story of her status and taste. With her personal toilette complete, the concubine turns her attention to the wider duties of the day. She might sit down to a breakfast of tea and pastries, a far cry from the sumptuous feasts reserved for the emperor and empress. Yet this simple meal is a luxury compared to the days of hunger and uncertainty that many concubines endure. After breakfast, it's time for quiet contemplation and leisure. Perhaps she take a stroll in the palace gardens, her footsteps echoing softly on the marble paths. Or maybe she sit by a tranquil pond, watching koi fish glide through the water, their scales shimmering in the sunlight. These moments of calm are not just for relaxation, but a chance to clear her mind for the more rigorous tasks ahead. The afternoon brings a new set of responsibilities. The concubine might engage in calligraphy, practicing her elegant strokes on rice paper, or lose herself in the art of embroidery, creating designs that are as intricate as the patterns on her own garments. These are not mere hobbies. They are important tools for a concubine to attract the emperor's attention. As evening falls, the palace comes alive with activity. As the sky darkens, the concubine prepares for another round of rituals. She bathes once more, the steam rising around her like a shroud, enveloping her in warmth and fragrance. She changes into lighter, more comfortable robes, the colors perhaps softer, the fabrics gentler on her skin. The day ends as it began, with music filling the air. But now it's the turn of the zeng, a large zither, its resonant notes echoing through the halls. The concubine might play, lost in the music, or she might simply listen, letting the melodies lull her into a peaceful state. The life of a concubine was not all glamour and privilege. Despite the allure of the imperial palace, these women were also bound by strict rules and regulations. Their days were structured, their interactions monitored, and their very movements dictated by the protocols of the court. Living in a world of intricate hierarchies, they had to navigate a minefield of etiquette, always aware of their place within the larger imperial order. A slight misstep could lead to disgrace, a careless word could make an enemy. For these women, life was a delicate balance. They had to cultivate an air of mystery, hint at their own value without appearing too eager, display their talents subtly, never overshadowing the empress. It was a tightrope walk between visibility and obscurity, between confidence and timidity. In the heart of the imperial palace, the concubines were not just objects of beauty or vessels for producing heirs. They were individuals with hopes, dreams, and fears. They laughed, they cried, they loved, they hated. They formed bonds of friendship and shared stories of their lives outside the palace walls. They dreamed of freedom, of love that transcended the confines of the imperial hierarchy. Despite their gilded cages, their lives were not without meaning. They found solace in the arts, in the subtle gestures of friendship, and in the quiet moments of contemplation. Thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed this journey into the heart of the imperial palace. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next time, may your days be filled with the beauty and tranquility of ancient China. When the sun peeked over the palace walls, bathing in its golden light, a new day began for the concubines. Mornings were about far more than looking attractive. It was about presenting themselves beautifully to stay in the emperor's good graces and advance in the deadly game of imperial favor. And so, without an ounce of makeup on her face, a concubine would begin her day, hoping that by sundown she might just catch the emperor's eye once again. She would wash her face in water that had been infused overnight with flower petals or a mixture of herbs. Each one had its own special quality. Some believed to brighten the complexion, others to make the skin soft and supple. After cleansing her face, she might sit before a low table, carefully applying cosmetics, dabbing white rice powder on her cheeks and temples to give her skin a flawless look. A touch of rouge made from crushed safflowers would add color to her lips and tinge her cheeks with a rosy glow. Her eyebrows would be shaped and darkened with burnt willow sticks. Every movement was deliberate, every choice telling a story. Attendants would assist with the dressing, but every choice of robe color, every knot, every hair ornament was loaded with meaning. Yellow, for instance, was reserved for the emperor. Certain floral patterns on her robe might align her with a seasonal festival or empress. The peony, for instance, was a symbol of wealth and nobility. Lotus blossoms carried the message of modesty and faithfulness. A single misstep, a slightly askew robe, or a hair ornament deemed too ostentatious could be interpreted as arrogance or disrespect. In this highly visual symbolic world, they had to be impeccable at all times. Once dressed, the concubines would turn their attention to the courtyard outside. If the weather was fair, they would practice their court etiquette, bending the knees, dipping the head, speaking in the precise, respectful tone that was expected of them when addressing the emperor or higher-ranking consorts. This was an essential part of their training. For a single misstep, a slightly improper bow or a misplaced hand could be misinterpreted, leading to accusations of arrogance or disrespect. Such a reputation could ruin a concubine's chances of ever gaining the emperor's favor. As the morning progressed, breakfast would be served. Delicate congee, steamed buns, and fragrant tea would be brought to each concubine in her chambers. While it might seem like a tranquil, peaceful scene, this, too, was a silent battleground. For if one concubine was served a rare delicacy from the imperial kitchens, it could spark jealousy and suspicion in the other. Such occurrences could fuel months of whisper campaigns and subtle sabotage. Yet, amidst this tension, there was space for artistry. The soft plucking of zither strings echoed through the courtyards. The gentle swish of ink on paper and the rhythmic clatter of a woman's needle as she embroidered a silk tapestry filled the quiet space. These moments of calm were deceptive, however. They were as much about competition as the cosmetic rituals. These refined activities were meant to keep the emperor interested. A concubine who played a haunting melody on the zither, or composed a moving poem on silk, was more likely to remain in the emperor's memory. The mourning period was a delicate dance, a balance of tradition, symbolism, and calculated moves. It was a time when the concubines, without the pressure of the emperor's gaze, could maneuver and present themselves in the best possible light. It was about showcasing their beauty, yes, but also their wit, their talent, and their symbolic value. Each smile, each poem, each perfectly applied cosmetic was a step in a silent, intricate competition. For in the emperor's eyes, they were not just women, but living, breathing pieces on the complex chessboard of his imperial court. In the heart of the sprawling imperial palace, where the sun's rays filtered through layers of silk, a different kind of power play unfolded. It was a world of whispers, of calculated smiles and veiled threats, where the stakes were high and the competition was fierce. Welcome to the series. Today we'll pull back the curtain on one of the most intriguing aspects of life in the harem, the art of making allies and enemies in the elusive game of survival. As the morning court gave way to noon, an electric tension would grip the palace. The eunuchs, those enigmatic figures who glided through the corridors of power, would arrive bearing the emperor's decree. Their hushed pronouncements would echo through the halls, carrying with them the news of which concubines had been summoned to grace the emperor's presence that evening. This ritual was more than just a notification. It was a public declaration of favor, a moment that could elevate a concubine's status or relegate her to the shadows. For those whose names were called, there were both elation and trepidation. Elation at the prospect of the emperor's favor, but also a deep-rooted fear of what it meant to enter his chambers. The chosen ones would hurry to prepare, knowing that their interaction with the emperor could change everything. However, for the majority of women in the harem who were not summoned, the afternoon would bring its own set of challenges. They would navigate a complex web of emotions, often resorting to subtle displays of pique or feigned illness to express their discontent. This was their silent rebellion against the emperor's choices, a way to convey that they, too, mattered in the grand scheme of the harem. While some concubines might throw themselves into needlework or other crafts, their nimble fingers masking their envy, others would seek solace in the company of fellow concubines. In the shared silence of their rooms, they would discuss the latest developments, the comings and goings of the palace, and most importantly, they would exchange news about the emperor's moods and preferences. The afternoon was when the concubines not summoned would use their influence to form and strengthen alliances, forging bonds that would help them survive the unpredictable world of the harem. These alliances were not merely social. They were political lifelines. Friendships were forged and maintained because every concubine was acutely aware that she might need assistance at any moment. A well-connected ally could advocate on her behalf, provide useful intelligence, or shield her from malicious gossip. The art of cultivating allies was essential. Concubines formed social circles or cliques, often united by their rank, regional background, or shared grievances. Within these groups, information flowed freely, and collective action could be taken to influence the emperor's decisions or thwart the plans of rival factions. However, alliances could also be based on necessity. A concubine who had fallen out of favor might find herself suddenly seeking the support of women she had once dismissed. The fickle nature of the emperor's attention meant that no one was truly secure, and a show of solidarity among the concubines could be a powerful way to remind them of their worth. Afternoons in the harem were not just about managing rivalries and forming alliances. They were also about self-improvement. Many concubines, eager to catch the emperor's eye or advance their position within the palace hierarchy, would spend their time honing their skills in literature, history, and etiquette. Appointed tutors would guide them in these pursuits, recognizing that the emperor had a particular fondness for women who could hold intelligent conversations. A well-timed reference to a classic poem or an obscure historical fact could make a lasting impression on the emperor. These intellectual pursuits were not merely a means to an end. They were a reflection of the Confucian values that permeated Chinese culture. The ability to quote from ancient texts or discuss philosophical concepts was seen as a mark of refinement and intelligence. Moreover, these lessons provided a form of escape from the confines of the harem, allowing the concubines to explore the vast world of ideas and knowledge. Despite the restrictions placed on their movement, the pursuit of education kept their minds sharp and their spirits high. Yet not all afternoons were consumed by the quest for power or knowledge. Many times the concubines would simply sit in the palace gardens, fanned by attendants while they gossiped in low voices. Gossip was not just a pastime for them. It was a vital source of information. Knowing who was gaining or losing favor in the emperor's eyes, who was plotting against whom, or what was happening beyond the palace walls was crucial for their survival. Each bit of gossip was like a piece of currency, and the concubines exchanged it carefully, always weighing the potential benefits and risks. The seemingly idle chatter could actually be a way of keeping tabs on the shifting sands of power. As the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the palace grounds, the concubines would find themselves enveloped by a strange mix of anticipation and dread. They knew that their lives, for the moment, would revolve around the emperor's whims, and they prepared themselves for another round of the intricate dance of survival. Did you find this video insightful? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more captivating stories from history's hidden harems. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple as the sprawling palace prepared for its most anticipated ritual of the day. Eunuchs bearing a golden tablet bearing the name of the lucky concubine for the night made their way through the labyrinthine corridors, their hushed voices echoing the anticipation that filled every chamber. In the imperial quarters, servants bustled about, drawing the heavy curtains that separated the emperor's bedroom from the rest of the world. Incense burners were filled with fragrant woods and flowers, their smoke curling upwards towards the ornate bed canopy. The chosen concubine, adorned in a robe the color of sunset, approached the emperor's bed. Her head bowed slightly, her eyes downcast, yet a mischievous smile played on her lips. She was young, perhaps in her early 20s, with skin like alabaster and eyes that sparkled like obsidian. Her raven hair cascaded down her back like a silken waterfall. When the emperor first saw her, his heart skipped a beat. This was no ordinary concubine. She was different, and he couldn't help but wonder what made her stand out. As the concubine neared the bed, the eunuchs carefully lifted the heavy folds of the curtain, revealing the emperor. He lay there, a majestic figure draped in golden robes, his face etched with the wisdom of years, though his eyes still held the spark of youthful passion. Their eyes met, and a silent understanding passed between them. The emperor motioned with a slight gesture for her to wait a moment as he composed himself. With a gentle smile, he watched as she stood gracefully beside his bed, patiently awaiting his next move. The emperor rose from his bed, his movements surprisingly agile for a man of his age. The concubine instinctively stepped back, her eyes wide with a mixture of awe and apprehension. The emperor approached her, his gaze intense, and offered her his hand. Startled by his sudden movement, the concubine instinctively took a step back, her eyes widening in surprise. However, when she met the emperor's gaze, she saw a kindness and warmth that put her at ease. Slowly, hesitantly, she placed her hand in his, feeling the strength and gentleness of his touch at the same time. He led her to a nearby writing desk where they sat together, the atmosphere charged with unspoken possibilities. The emperor's eyes twinkled with amusement as he observed the concubine's reaction to his unexpected invitation. He enjoyed this moment, the anticipation, the shared surprise, the nervous energy that crackled between them. It was a playful dance, a subtle game of cat and mouse that had been a part of their tradition for generations. The emperor broke into a warm smile, extending his invitation. The concubine, still blushing, nodded shyly, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Rising from the desk, the emperor led the way, his long robe flowing behind him like a crimson tide. The concubine followed, her own robe rustling softly, her steps light and graceful. As they walked, the emperor's thoughts raced back to his youth, to a time when he, too, was young and eager to please. He remembered the thrill of anticipation, the flutter in his chest as he awaited his turn to be chosen. A faint smile touched his lips as he realized that these feelings were timeless, ageless, transcending generations. The ritual continued late into the night, a harmonious blend of tradition and affection. As the moon climbed higher in the sky, casting silvery beams through the palace windows, the emperor and the concubine found solace in each other's company. Theirs was a bond forged in tradition, strengthened by shared moments and sweetened by the promise of more to come. Yet as the night deepened, the emperor's eyelids grew heavy. The rituals of the day, the laughter, the conversations, it had all taken their toll. With a contented sigh, he lay back on his cushions, signaling to the concubine that it was time for her to return to her chambers. She rose gracefully, her movements fluid and elegant, and curtsied deeply before the emperor. As she turned to leave, the emperor called out to her, his voice raspy with sleepiness. She paused, her back still turned to him, waiting for his words. "You are dismissed for tonight," he murmured, his voice barely a whisper. "Rest well, my precious one." With a final graceful curtsy, the concubine slipped out of the room, leaving the emperor to his slumber. In the quiet of the night, the palace walls echoed with the whispers of their tryst, a testament to the enduring traditions of an ancient love. The show The Crown might make it seem like Prince Philip and Princess Diana were the first royals to ever get jealous and stab each other in the back. But according to historical records, this kind of palace drama is actually pretty normal. From sabotaging rivals to having them put to death, here's how jealous concubines took revenge throughout history. When you live in a palace, especially with lots of people vying for the same power, it can be hard to keep friends. In fact, it can be downright dangerous. While shows like The Crown may have you believing that having your portrait painted by an artist considered untalented at best and a plagiarist at worst is the worst thing that can happen to you, a more accurate depiction of the dangers of palace life can be found in the 2018 Korean show, The Little Women. In it, the main character, Oh In-young, has risen to become a consort in the Korean palace. But she soon finds herself targeted by another jealous consort who wants her position. In order to take Oh In-young down, this rival consort does everything from influencing the eunuchs, or male servants in the palace, to getting the king's astrologer to claim that a certain day is unlucky for Oh In-young. In the end, the jealous consort successfully manages to frame Oh In-young, causing her to lose the king's favor and be exiled. While this show is fictional, it's rooted in history. Consorts in royal palaces throughout the world have been known to be jealous of one another. And if a consort was higher ranking than the rest, they had the power to influence the eunuchs to do their bidding. Eunuchs were typically in charge of delivering messages, but they were also responsible for keeping secrets. And if a consort bribed them enough, they would gladly turn a blind eye to certain behaviors or at the very least keep quiet about them. Rumors spread by the jealous consort could easily convince the king that his concubine was cheating on him, practicing witchcraft, or planning to poison him. And if the king was already suspicious of his concubine, these rumors would likely seal her fate. It was also common for jealous consorts to manipulate the court astrologers. In Korea, China, and Japan, the emperor or king was often seen as a divine figure, and so anything that went against the celestial order was cause for alarm. If an astrologer claimed that a certain day was unlucky for one of the king's concubines, then it would be best for her to stay indoors that day, out of fear that she might bring bad luck upon herself or the kingdom. These seemingly harmless proclamations could easily prevent a concubine from seeing the king and slowly fade her from his memory. And if all else failed, a jealous consort could always rely on the oldest method of getting rid of her rivals, having her put to death. In ancient Rome, the emperor's wife, Julia Misa, was rumored to have poisoned her rival, Poppaea Sabina. And in the Ottoman Empire, a sultan's wife could have her rival put to death by the sultan's wife, Ibrahim Sultan. Even the most powerful women in the world are not above petty revenge. One of the most famous examples of a jealous concubine exacting her revenge can be found in the records of the Han Dynasty in China. Consort Qi had been one of Emperor Wu's many concubines, but she fell out of favor after having her fortune-teller, Madame Li, put to death. Apparently, the fortune-teller had offended Empress Dowager Lizi, and Consort Qi was seen as an accomplice to murder. To make things worse, Consort Qi had once saved the life of a servant girl who later became the Empress's favorite. Empress Lu took full advantage of Consort Qi's past mistakes and used them to turn the king against her. When the king took Consort Qai's side in a petty argument, Empress Lu threw a tantrum and accused Consort Qi of disrespecting her. Soon after, the king agreed with his wife and demoted Consort Qi to the status of a servant. She was also forbidden from seeing the king, and her son was taken away from her. Unable to bear the humiliation, Consort Qi took her own life. Throughout history, there have been many cases of jealous concubines taking revenge on their rivals. They influenced the eunuchs, spread rumors, manipulated the court astrologers, and even murdered. When you're in a palace, you have to watch your every move because you never know when someone is jealous and waiting to take you down. Now watch what happens when you enter the king's bedroom. Or check out how much the royal family's net worth really is. In today's video, we'll be answering the question, what did concubines do all day? Now, when you think of ancient China, you probably imagine a big old wall, maybe a terracotta warrior or two, and definitely an emperor with a harem of concubines. Now, the life of a concubine has been romanticized by Hollywood and elsewhere. You might imagine beautiful women lounging around an imperial palace, having affairs with the emperor and plotting with one another to try and take over the empire. But what did they actually do all day? Well, very few concubines ended their lives as empresses or powerful dowagers. Many who failed to gain lasting favor were quietly retired to nunneries or small estates far from court, where they lived out their days in relative obscurity. Others stayed in the palace but faded into the background as new, younger women arrived. Those who did bear imperial sons could wield significant influence as imperial mothers or grandmothers, shaping succession politics. But for the majority, life as a concubine was a strange mix of luxury and imprisonment, opportunity and danger. In the end, what concubines did all day was survive with beauty, wit, and careful strategy, in one of the most intricate and unforgiving social systems in history. A concubine's duties varied greatly depending on her rank, age, personal relationship with the emperor, and most importantly, whether or not she had produced an heir. Like all things in Chinese history, it is impossible to generalize. However, I can offer some broad strokes. For starters, many concubines were incredibly young. When you enter the palace as a young woman, your job is to do just that. Stay young. Think of it like a beauty pageant. The younger you are, the more time you have to win the heart of the emperor and bear his child. This meant that many concubines, especially those who entered the palace as part of a larger group, would spend their days learning the arts and perfecting their beauty routine. There was a great deal of pressure to appear flawless, since this was seen as bringing glory to the emperor. Concubines would have spent hours each day applying makeup, donning elaborate wigs, and dressing in the latest fashions. They would have also likely participated in other beauty regimens common at the time, such as the application of scented oils and the use of jade to enhance the complexion. If a concubine was lucky enough to bear the emperor a son, her life would change drastically. Not only would she be rewarded with a higher rank, but she would also have a great deal of power over the young man's upbringing. As a mother, her job was to ensure that her son was the perfect little emperor, which meant teaching him the proper way to sit, walk, and talk. It also meant making sure he studied with the best tutors and participated in every activity a future emperor should. When she wasn't working, a concubine's life might look something like that of a noblewoman. She might have attended parties, gone shopping, or taken leisurely walks through the gardens. Concubines were also responsible for managing their own households, which might have included servants and other concubines. Managing a household was a full-time job in itself, as there were frequent power struggles among the women as they all jockeyed for position and favor with the emperor. A concubine of higher rank might have also been given charge of one of the emperor's wives, helping to manage her affairs and ensuring that she maintained her beauty and dignity. This is because one of the main goals of a concubine was to eventually become one of the emperor's official wives. This was much easier said than done, however, as the emperor often had many wives and concubines and the competition was fierce. A concubine had to be intelligent, quick-witted, and charming in order to succeed. Finally, let's not forget that life in an imperial palace was dangerous, not only because of the intrigue and backstabbing, but also because of the lack of medical knowledge. Diseases could spread quickly and often went unknown or improperly treated. Many concubines died young, either in childbirth or from some mysterious wasting disease. Those who died were usually given lavish burials, but that was little consolation to the living. Being a concubine was a high-risk, high-reward job. Very few women achieved lasting power or influence, but those that did had the potential to shape the empire. For the majority, however, life as a concubine was a mixture of luxury and confinement, a constant struggle to maintain their beauty and status in the hopes of winning the emperor's favor. Ultimately, a concubine's life was a precarious one. They lived and died in the shadow of the emperor, their fates hanging in the balance with each passing year. So what did concubines do all day? They survived. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe for more content. And as always, thanks for watching.